It's not letting me share.
1 second. Try now.
Okay. Yeah, should be fine. Okay, so we're good now?
Yes, we're good.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So, inshallah, I was thinking of a topic to discuss here, and I thought, what better topic is there than the Quran, right? We're in the month of Ramadan, and this is the time, inshallah, when we can take to, we can spend this time, I think we can use this time, inshallah, to maximize our benefit of Ramadan, inshallah. So before I begin here, don't worry about this here, what you see on the screen. Just a few points I want to share beforehand. First off, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to maximize the benefit we can take from this month of Ramadan, to allow us to benefit the most we can from this beautiful month that we have. And subhanallah, we should keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That, O you who have believed, كتب عليكم الصيام, that the fasting has been obligated upon you as it was obligated on those individuals or those communities before you, لعلكم تتقون. So there's a few points we can take here, inshallah. First off, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the fasting has been obligated upon us just as it was obligated on those before us, like the communities before us. And this is to give us, to console, the believers, to give us some psychological comfort, because when you have one individual doing something, like for example, if you're fasting by yourself, it's much more difficult than to fast when you have a community, around you. Much like the situation we have, subhanAllah, the COVID-19 coronavirus, since everyone is impacted pretty much around the whole world, it takes a little bit less of a toll on us than if an individual themselves was to be afflicted by it, right? So anyways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this fasting was obligated upon us just as it was obligated on the communities before us. And obviously, subhanAllah, this is a time where the communities come together, those individuals we don't see in the whole year, they start to appear out of nowhere, attending the masajid, mashallah, and they attend the night prayers and so on and so forth. And subhanallah, we're locked away now, sitting at home and away from the masajid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reopen the masajid for us very soon, inshallah, and allow us to at least attend the Eid there, inshallah, if not the last few days. Who knows how long it will be, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate the situation for us. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this ayah, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may be from amongst those who adopt taqwa, right? Who can receive taqwa. Now, what is exactly taqwa? There's so many definitions of it. One very simple definition, to keep it simple here, is, if I take my arm here and I block it here, it's like a shield, like a block, okay, shield. So I'm shielding myself from that haram thing in front of me. And you can say that's like a linguistic definition of taqwa, to block yourself from the haram. Now we see, my brothers and my sisters, we see that, subhanAllah, when we're abstaining from the halal things, that those things which are halal, eating, drinking, etc. When we abstain from those things, the halal things, then obviously, inshallah, we hope that abstaining from the haram things, the sinful things afterwards, will become much more easier. And so we should really use this time, my brothers, my sisters, to use this time as a training, a time of training, so that inshallah, when we leave this month of Ramadan, that we're changed, that we're different individuals, right? Because if we have not changed, we're the exact same people as we were before, then have we really benefited from the month of Ramadan, right? Very important question to ask ourselves here. Every single day, we should ask ourselves this question. If we have not changed, and we're not changing, and we're not going to change after, then what benefit are we getting out of this beautiful month of Ramadan? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ. لَعَلَّ here means perhaps, right? Doesn't mean, you're going to be changed. But if you take the appropriate steps, then you can, inshallah, make that change happen with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and in this very same verse, actually the verse right after it, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may be able to adopt taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. SubhanAllah. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ, that it is very few days, ma'dudat, a very numbered days, counted days. We can count it on our hands. SubhanAllah, and we see this is very true. When it comes to the month of Ramadan, it slips away from us, right? Before we know it, what is it today, 5th, 6th day? Before we know it, it's going to be 25th day, and then it's all over, right? And we are announcing Eid, and we're preparing for Eid, buying new clothes and whatnot, right? So this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's just ayyam ma'dudat, a few numbered days, right? So if we can't, or if we're not maximizing, or not taking the most benefit from these days, then obviously we have to try to change ourselves now before later, right? So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that easy for us. Now, what exactly is the topic I want to talk about? I mean, the topic I'm dealing with right now, we can go on about this, but anyways, I thought, I was really thinking about this, and I said, what exactly is the purpose of Ramadan, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says so that you can adopt taqwa, you can, become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this and that. So anyways, I want to ask some questions here from the audience here, try to make it interactive. If someone can give me an answer, what do you guys think the main purpose of Ramadan is? Or rather, let me reword the question. What should I be doing in Ramadan to make myself a better Muslim? Can someone try to answer that, inshallah? We have some brothers and sisters here. If you want to, inshallah, take a go at it, please try to answer that. I think someone is writing here. Okay, let me see here on the chat. Strive for taqwa. Yes, exactly. But when we're striving for taqwa, what is one of the ways we can actually, to make it easy, basically, right? To actually gain that taqwa, what is one of the ways we can use, inshallah? Okay, no worries. While you guys thinking here, inshallah. In this very same surah here, the Surah Al-Baqarah, the ayah recited, and I advise everyone to recite these ayat, inshallah, if you can today. It's verses 184, 185, roughly 184, I think, in Surah Al-Baqarah. And you can read from before that, from Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam, and just read the following ayat there, inshallah, and try to really reflect upon it. So anyways, the ayah after it, or the ayah right after it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, that this is the month in which the Quran was revealed. This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ, as a guidance for everyone, as a guidance for mankind, for humanity. So I was thinking about it, what is one of the greatest way, or what is one of the main reasons, or you can say the main benefit we can take from Ramadan, right? And it is the Quran, right? This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. So we have to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, strive for taqwa, etc. and so on. So how can we do that? What is the best way? It is to connect with the Quran, right? I mean, obviously you can give sadaqat, you can give the charity, you can do good in this month by many ways, numerous ways, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us. But one of the main things we should be doing, my brothers, my sisters, is really asking ourselves, where are we with the Quran, right? What is my connection with the Quran? As a Muslim, what is my connection with the Quran, subhanAllah? And it's not just about standing behind the Imam. I mean, that's one thing, alhamdulillah, listening to the Quran itself and so on is very rewarding. Standing behind the Imam in prayers and Taraweeh, the 20 rak'ahs, performing it and so on, listening to the Quran, that's fine, all in good, right? Giving sadaqat. But the question really is, how are we? What is our connection with the Quran, right? I mean, really ask yourself this question. Am I reciting the Quran daily, right? Or am I reciting the Quran? Am I trying to perform my own khatam of the Quran, right? My own reading of the Quran, right? And there's so many narrations from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that they emphasize the dua of the khatam. You know, when you make the dua, when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after you finish the khatam, there's so much emphasis on that, that some of them used to gather their family members and make dua in congregation and so on and so forth. And really, you know, we don't pay much attention to this. So ask yourself this question here: am I actually reading my own khatam of the Quran? Okay. If I'm not, why not? Is it because I don't know how to read? Is it because I'm not too confident in my tajweed? I'm getting mistakes here and there, right? It may be many things, right? Just ask yourself this question really and think about it, ponder upon this a little bit, and then try to address it. Try to answer, you know, the questions you may have in mind, or rather the problems that arise. You know, why am I not doing the khatam of the Quran? Why am I not reading the Quran? And try to find a solution to those problems, beginning from today, right? Again, this month will go by very quickly, beginning from today, inshallah. So that's one of the main things, right? Performing or having your own khatam, your own recitation of the Quran, so that you open your Quran, you're able to read the Quran. And obviously benefiting from the Quran, right? Pondering upon the Quran. How many of us here actually take a tafsir of the Quran, any tafsir of the Quran, obviously authentic tafsir, or listen to a scholar, a reliable scholar, and have them explain the Quran, and we just try to listen to it? That's one thing. Another thing is, how many of us actually try to understand the Quran on our own? Okay, we don't need to wait for a scholar to come and explain to us. We can try understanding by ourselves, right? Try to take those baby steps towards understanding Arabic so that we can understand the Quran. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to become a allama, a very great scholar in Arabic. Rather, just read a translation in your own language. SubhanAllah, we have translations in every single language, right? At least you get a basic understanding of what the message of the Quran is, if you've never even read the translation, right? And then obviously taking time actually contemplating upon it. There's a difference between reading a tafsir of the Quran, trying to understand the meanings, and then there's one thing, you know, trying to read with an understanding, getting a tafsir and so on. And another thing is actually just doing tadabbur, right? Reflecting upon the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَتَدَبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ, so that they can actually reflect and contemplate upon the ayat, right? So how many of us actually sit? I mean, you don't need a scholar to tell you when you're reading these ayat, لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبَلٍ لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا, that if the Quran were to be revealed upon a mountain, you would see it humbled, right? You would see the mountain humbled. How many of us need, I mean, do we really need a scholar to explain those ayat? Yes, obviously it would help us, but just to do tadabbur and reflect upon it, subhanAllah, that mountain, right? It's humbling, it would humble itself, right? لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله, broken into pieces from the fear, from the humbleness, out of humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What about us? We have the Quran, right? We have the Quran right by us. Is it just collecting dust even in the month of Ramadan? Or are we trying to actually take benefit from the Quran? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us and allow us to take the most benefit from the Quran as we can. So now to some actual practical steps on how we can actually take the benefit of the Quran. This is the month of the Quran. Number one, my brothers, my sisters, is to be able to read the Quran correctly. Okay? If you're learning any language, whatever language it may be, the first thing you do is you learn the letters, right? And you learn how to actually pronounce the letters, right? So that the individual can understand you. That's the first step you do. So when it comes to the Quran, it's no different, okay? Some of us are very lax when it comes to this, but we couldn't care less. I mean, it doesn't matter, I don't care, right? The whole year goes by, it doesn't matter, whatever. I'm just reading as I'm reading, right? But are you actually taking steps to improve your recitation? Very important, right? The Quran was revealed in Arabic, so we have to make sure that we're reciting in that very same Arabic, right? The pronunciation should be correct. So that's one thing. Try to focus on tajweed, right? Try to focus on tajweed, making sure our recitation is correct, our pronunciation is correct. Are we reciting with the rules of tajweed and so on and so forth? This book I have here, by the way, I don't know why I opened this here. I was planning to go through it, but I don't think I would have enough time. Maybe I might go through a section here, inshallah. But anyways, the first thing is to recite with tajweed, right? Make sure your recitation is proper. Number two, my brothers, my sisters, is try to understand the meanings of the Quran, okay? And again, you don't need to take a full course of Arabic where you study 2 years or 10 years or whatever it may be, right? You have the Quran in front of you, right? Just open your translation, whatever language it may be, English, Urdu, Farsi, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Open that translation and try to understand it, okay? Try to learn the meanings of the Quran, okay? Like at least try to learn the word-to-word meanings, right? Everyone can do this. I mean, you open the Quran, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdu, all praise and thanks. Lillahi belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabbi, the creator, the Lord, etc. Al-alameen of the worlds. Done, right? Now, are there more layers of meanings? For sure, right? They go on and on. There's no end to those, for sure. However, a basic understanding, can you get a basic understanding? Why not, right? When you're standing in your own prayers, you want to be able to understand your own salah. What does Subhana Rabbi al-A'la mean? What does Subhana Rabbi al-Azim mean? Allahu Akbar, most of us, alhamdulillah, know what that means, inshallah. But some of the more meanings, at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu, when reading this in prayer, okay? So the actual prayer itself, can we understand that? Can we understand the basic surahs? Surah Al-Fatiha, can we understand it? Surah Al-Nas, Surah Al-Falaq, etc. And just try to work your way up. I mean, really spend some time. And again, this is that month where we can use this as a training period, okay? Use this as a training period and try to set some time aside. Make some habits, right? And make some habits in this month so that inshallah they can remain with you and stay with you even after this month, inshallah. So that way, you know, maybe just 5-10 minutes, subhanAllah. Begin with 10 minutes, right? I'll tell you one very simple practical step that I use as well. Very useful. I've learned this from some of my teachers, is 10 minutes. Start off with 10 minutes, okay? Set a timer there right beside you and say, I'm going to read at least 10 minutes, okay? It's very difficult. Sometimes we don't want to read, right? So 10 minutes, I'm going to set a timer there, no problem. Next, once 10 minutes over, close it, done. Close it, whatever it is, right? The Quran, tafsir, meanings, close it, I'm done. Next day, increase 1 minute only, 11 minutes, then 12, 13, 14, 15, etc. Okay? And this has no limit, right? Begin with 10 minutes, inshallah, you'll see it becomes so easy, you want to read more, but don't read more, just close it. Next day, increase 1 minute, 11, 12, 13. And this is a very practical way, a very good way actually to increase your level of reading, right? We as Muslims have to be reading more, okay? We have to be reading more. So this is one way, inshallah, we can try to increase the amount we read, especially beginning with the at least the translation of the Quran, and then trying to read the larger tafasir of the Quran, trying to understand the meanings, inshallah, and so forth, right? And again, you know, certain ayat you may not understand without the help of a scholar. That's understandable, the ayat of ahkam. But how many ayat are those, right? Very few. If you look at the main ayat, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, right in the opening, that this is a guidance for the believers. So can we take the guidance from it? For sure, right? We can take the guidance. Now, when we're referring to the ahkam, right? When we're referring to those ayat which require further explanation, exactly, you know, for example, the more intricate matters of prayer, of zakah, of the different pillars of Islam, then for sure go to a scholar, sit with them, listen to a lecture, whatever it may be, and try to take the most benefit you can from them, from that manner. That's fine, inshallah, right? But taking that guidance itself, that is open to anyone, right? You don't need anyone for that. You can begin by yourself, at least learn the basic meanings, okay? So number one, make sure you are trying to improve in your tajweed and your pronunciation, okay? Number two, try to improve, try to understand the Quran, at least the basic understanding, okay? And obviously number three, try to implement it in your life, right? If we're not practicing what we're learning, then what are we doing? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are able to practice and apply what we learn, right? So that we don't just learn it and it goes from this year, comes out, done, right? No, we take it, inshallah, try to implement it right away, you know, so that we can obviously take the benefit from it. So any ayah you read, even if it's just one ayah, try to, you know, apply that in your life right away. So again, as I mentioned here, I mean, originally I wanted to talk about something else, but I guess this is fine, inshallah. So the three steps or three things I mentioned, number one is try to improve your pronunciation. Number two is try to learn the meaning. I don't think I have time to go into how we can actually take some steps to learn the meaning, but let's go ahead and at least try to understand tajweed here then, since I have this book open here. So very basically here. You guys can just see here. I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. This book is quite simple. So tajweed literally means to do something well. And technically it means to recite the letters properly. That's it. Just leave this here. It means to recite the letters properly. Okay. Now the ruling of tajweed. Okay. So the question you may have is, you know, do I actually have to read with tajweed? Most people don't know that, right? So that's why they don't want to go and learn. But if you see the ruling of tajweed, you see here it's fard kifaya to learn all the rules of tajweed, but it's fard ayn to recite Quran with tajweed. Now I'm talking too much here. I want to ask someone here, please. Can you tell me the difference between fard kifaya? Okay, I think I have it here. Can you tell me the difference between fard kifaya and fard ayn, please? Anyone? If you've already seen it, that's fine as well. Can someone tell me a difference between fard kifaya and fard ayn? Okay, can someone tell me what does fard mean? You hear different terms: sunnah, wajib, haram, makruh, fard. No one? Okay, I have someone here, alhamdulillah. Obligation, thank you, yes. Jazakumullah khairan. So a fard is an obligation, so something that we must do, okay? But now there's a difference here. There's something which is kifaya and which is ayn. So look here, fard kifaya means that if at least one person in the community does it, then the responsibility falls away from the rest. But if no one performs it, the whole community will be answerable for its negligence. Okay, and fard ayn it's required from every individual. Now, understand this very well here, that fard kifaya, meaning that if one person does it, then the sin will fall away from the rest of the community. Okay, so in tajweed, it is fard kifaya for at least one individual to know all the rules of tajweed. So if what is ikhfa, what is idhar, what is idgham, what is mad, what are the different types of mudud, what are different levels of ikhfa, and so on and so forth, right? At least one person should be trained properly, if not more, and so that they can actually go and explain the rules of tajweed at a very high level, very in depth. But then it's fard ayn to actually apply those rules. Okay, so not necessarily, you don't have to, not everyone has to be a scholar and has to know the intricacies of all the different levels of tajweed and all the different rulings, but they should be able to apply them. Okay, they should be able to apply them. I had something here, actually I want to go through this here. I might have some time here, inshallah. One of the authorities on tajweed here is Imam Ibn al-Jazari. I was just reading this actually here yesterday. Imam Ibn al-Jazari, rahimahullah, he wrote a poem here, and in that poem he summarizes some of the main rules of tajweed, but he has a very beautiful chapter on the chapter of tajweed. Okay, so I want to go ahead and just read that a bit and try to make sense of that, because going back to what I discussed here is, just to recap here, obviously this is the month of Ramadan. We want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the main reasons, or one of the main ways rather, we can do that is through the Quran. And since the Quran is in Arabic, we must learn, or at least be able to recite, right, with the proper Arabic accent or the pronunciation. And this applies both for Arabs and non-Arabs, right? At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this was in their blood, right? It was part of them. They knew how to recite tajweed. They knew the real rules of Arabic, nahwu, sarf, etc. But as over time, eventually the rules had to be codified, right? The tajweed rules had to be codified. Arabic signs had to be codified, and so now everyone has to learn it. So, anyways, he says, وَالْأَخْذُ بِالتَّجْوِيدِ حَتْمٌ لَازِمُ مَنْ لَمْ يُصَحِّحِ الْقُرْآنَ آثِمُ. He says that it is an obligation, that the application of tajweed is an obligation. It's a must. And whosoever does not recite or correct the recitation, that person will be a sinner. Okay, that person will be a sinner. Okay, now there's a lot of explanation to this, so please bear with me here. First of all, understand that there are two types of mistakes here. Actually, I have that here somewhere here. Okay, so there are two types of mistakes. There's a lahan jali, which is a clear error. Jali means clear, and khafi, which is a hidden error. Okay. Now let's go here. So there are basically four main ways a person can make a major error, like a very clear error, and everyone will know what that is. First of all, it's adding a letter. Like if you say Alhamdulillah, okay, let's look at Surah Fatiha, since this is what we recite in our prayers, and without it, the prayer is unacceptable. Right? So adding a letter here. So if you say Alhamdulillah, it's wrong. You added a letter. Or if you delete a letter, you omit a letter, you say lam yalid wa lam yulad. Yulad. It's actually yulad, but you said yulad. right? That's a mistake. Or you change a letter. You say alhamdulillah instead of alhamdulillah. Or you change a haraka, a vowel. It's fatha dhamma kasra, or you can say zabar zir pesh, right? If you say alhamdulillah instead of alhamdulillah. Right? So these are the four main ways a person can falter or make a mistake in their tajweed. And this would mean a very major mistake, right? A mistake that can change the meaning and perhaps even nullify the prayer, right? So for example, in Arabic, qalb with a qaf, qalb means heart. Kalb with a kaf means dog. So if you're reciting kalb everywhere, right, when you're supposed to be reciting qalb, fi qulubihim marad, or rather actually the kalb, right, anywhere where qalb comes in the Quran, and you're reciting kalb, then you're saying a dog, right? Al-iyadhu billah. And it can change the meaning drastically, as you've seen, right? From dog to heart. It's a very, very major difference. So many examples I can give here, but, or for example, even changing a meaning, you know, such a meaning, for example here, وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ, right? Dawood killed Jalut, right? If you say وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودَ, and you change it, you just change the dhamma here and the fatha there, it would change the meaning. Or for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. If you were to say رَبَّهُ, I don't even want to say the meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim, right? And you get what I'm trying to say. If you even change, this is one haraka, just a fatha. You change the fatha to dhamma, that dhamma to fatha, right? So how many of us are actually are negligent in this, right? We don't even try to improve ourselves. So anyways, those are the two main types of, so this is one of the main, so this is lahan jali, right? And these are the four main ways a person can falter or make a mistake. And lahan khafi is basically, it's like a hidden error, okay? So only those people who have studied tajweed to a higher level, they will be able to identify that, okay? One more example I'll give you here is وَنُدَخِلُهُمْ ظِلًّا ظَلِيلًا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, which means we shall admit those, yani those people who, you know, those people in Jannah, we shall admit them into bounteous shade, okay? ظِلًّا ظَلِيلًا with a dha. If you're to say, if you're to say وَنُدَخِلُهُمْ ظِلًّا ظَلِيلًا with a dhal, that means we shall admit them into a wretched disgrace. You see a difference, right? Plenty of shade versus disgrace. And this is just a dhal and dha. And if you say zal, it means a slip, right? For example, in Urdu language, you have the dha, dhal, za almost read the same, the za, 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 right? So we have to be very important. I mean, we have to be very careful, rather, when we're reading, right? Making sure that we don't falter in these letters and so on and so forth. Now, so there's some detail here. So Imam al-Jazari says a person who does not read with tajweed, they will be held accountable, etc., sinful, and so on. So their detail here is as follows. So we have to keep in mind here, Imam al-Jazari himself, he's explaining this here. He says there are three categories of people. Listen to this very carefully. Number one, the person who's able to recite correctly and he does so. Okay, very well and good. As the Prophet ﷺ mentions, Hadith al-Mahiru bil-Qur'ani ma'a safarat al-kiram al-barra, that the one who's proficient in the recitation of the Quran, he will be in the company of the noble angels, subhanAllah. And then there's a second category, the one who is trying as hard as they can, they're striving as best as they can to recite correctly, but yet they're faltering in the recitation, they're making mistakes. And the Prophet mentions here in that same hadith, وَالَّذِي يَتَتَعْتَعُ الْقُرْآنِ وَهُوَ عَلَيْهِ شَاقٌ فَلَوْ وَجْرَانْ أَوْ كَمَا قَالَ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. That the one who is reciting the Quran and he's stumbling, right? He's faltering, you know, he's unable to read fluently, for example, and it's very difficult for him, then that person will still have two rewards, right? One reward for the recitation and the other for their ijtihad, for their striving to recite correctly. Okay, so one category is the one who's able to read very well and he's doing so, alhamdulillah. Second category, the person who's able to, who's trying to read, right, but he or she is faltering in the recitation, even they will be getting the reward. Then the third is the one who is able to recite correctly, but they're just negligent, you know. And this happens to some as well. A very important lesson we can take as well is that some people who are huffaz, right, they have memorized the full Quran, they have studied tajweed. As years go by, 10, 20 years, they start to forget the rules. And the reason for that is because they're not applying what they learn. And we can, you know, we can see this in all aspects of our life. If a person learns any mas'ala, anything, any ruling, right, in Islam, whether it is regarding anything, right? And then they don't apply by it, they don't apply that in their life, then eventually they might forget it, right? So it's always important that we apply what we learn, inshallah. So anyways, when Imam Ibn al-Jazari says that the person will be sinful, he's actually referring to the third category, meaning the one who is able to recite correctly, but he or she is not doing so on purpose, maybe out of laziness, right? But this does not mean, my brothers, my sisters, that you say, okay, alhamdulillah, I'm trying my best here, but I just can't do it. No, you have to go and try to learn properly. Imam Ibn al-Jazari mentions here as well, he says here, and I quote him, he says that the one who is too proud, too haughty, too arrogant, to humble himself before a teacher is also included from amongst the sinner. Okay? Because that individual, I mean, yes, we can say to a certain extent, that person is trying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them for, their endeavor and so on. And inshallah, they won't get the sin, even if they're not reciting correctly, because they're trying. But what does trying entail, right? I mean, trying should entail that you're obviously trying to study with a teacher, right? You're trying to learn the different, you're trying to go to a teacher and actually learn the tajweed rules and not just sitting there and saying, okay, I'm trying my best and that's it. No, if you're not actually trying to learn with a teacher, a qualified teacher, then obviously is that really trying. Okay, I don't know how many minutes we have here. Anyway, so going forward, he said that the person will be sinner. So now we know who is the sinner, the one who can recite correctly but is lazy to do so. Why? He says, لِأَنَّهُ بِهِ الْإِلَهُ أَنزَلَ وَهَكَذَا مِنْهُ إِلَيْنَا وَصَلَى. He says, because with the tajweed, because it is with the tajweed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran. Right? It's with the tajweed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran, and this is how it has reached us. From the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam through the messenger Jibreel alayhi salam, he taught it in the very same manner with tajweed to the companions, right, the Sahaba, to the Tabi'een, to those who followed them generation after generation after generation. And we can even see till this day, students, when they recite to their teacher, they have a sanad, a chain, which connects them to their teacher, to their teacher, to their teacher, to their teacher, right? Going back all the way to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and reciting in a very proficient manner in which the Quran was revealed, right? To reciting with the rules of tajweed and so on and so forth. Now there are some individuals who may say, we don't have to recite 100%. Maybe the person can recite 98%. But if you're to carry on and say, just say 98% after every generation, then after a couple of decades, you see what will happen, right? 2% will eventually, be not 98, but it'll be 60, 50%. Then obviously the Quran will not be recited properly. But this is the promise that Allah made, that inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra, that indeed we have sent down the Quran and we have preserved it. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved the Quran, not only its actual writing, but even even the recitation, right? Not only the writing, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved the meaning as well, obviously, so that we don't have a random person who stands up tomorrow and says, the Quran says this. No, we have the group of scholars always till the end of time who will say, no, this is what the Quran meant, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has even preserved the recitation. To such an extent, and I'll conclude here, inshallah, there's much more I can discuss here, but I hope that some of it has made sense, inshallah. To such an extent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved the Quran. I want to share one example here. Over the past 100, 200 years, there has been a difference on just if you can see here, just opening the mouth here when you're reciting the iqlab. Okay, so for example, when you say mim ba'di, so look here, mim ba'di, is it mim ba'di? I keep my mouth closed like this, or do I leave a small gap? Mim ba'di, right? Okay, and they've been debating upon this for the past 100 so years. And this is just a matter of opening the mouth. I'm not even talking about the actual pronunciation, right? The actual letters of the Quran. I'm not talking about the harakat, the fatha, dhamma, kasra. We're just talking about whether to open your mouth on a small, minute issue, right? So you can see, subhanAllah, the way the Quran has been preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through all this time. And we have those individuals who can and are still reading very in a manner which is which is supposed to be read, right? Which the Quran is supposed to be read. And obviously we have the scholars as well who will always be teaching till the end of time, not only the Quranic sciences or tajweed, but even other sciences. So we should always take benefit from those qualified teachers, inshallah. And okay, inshallah, I conclude with that. I'll summarize what I mentioned here very briefly. Number one, this month we use, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that we can adopt or we can gain taqwa. What is taqwa? I said a very basic definition is to abstain from sins, do the good. And this month we can use, inshallah, as that training period to, we're abstaining from the halal things, right? Eating, drinking, relations, and so on with one spouse. So obviously the haram would become much more easier, inshallah, afterwards to abstain from, right? If we use this time wisely. So the second point I said was using this time wisely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's just a number of days. And then he mentions in the next verse after it that Shahr Ramadan, that this is the month of the Quran, the month of Ramadan, in which the Quran was revealed. So then one of the ways to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is through the Quran. Right? He says, he's revealed it. So how do we connect through the Quran? I said there are many things we need to do. Number one is to be able to recite properly. So inshallah, this was a little brief description or discussion on tajweed. Another thing is obviously trying to understand the meanings of the Quran. Inshallah, perhaps I can just explain that in the next, I think there's one or two more lectures, inshallah. So we'll go ahead and try to discuss that as well. And then obviously trying to apply it in our life, right? So with that, inshallah, I wrap this up. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask any question right now before we conclude. Anyone here? If anyone wants to speak, I can unmute them here. Or if you want to type it as a chat, you want to chat, you want to type it, that's fine as well, inshallah. Okay, I think I have someone here. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you and reward all of you. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to connect back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we have been away from Him, and to use this month as a training period, inshallah, so we can go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connect ourselves with the Quran. This is the way. My brothers, my sisters, if I was to say one advice to you, connect with the Quran. That's it, right? Connect with the Quran, you'll find yourself connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very simple. So many people find so many ways, they're like, how do I connect with Allah? Let me do this, let me do that, I'll have someone make a dua for me, I'll have someone make istikhara for me, or whatever, right? Some people say some weird things. And one of the main easiest things to do is go and read the Quran, right? Connect yourself with the Quran. If you do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you, inshallah, and you'll be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't think there's any other questions here, Brother Afaf, so inshallah we can conclude here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.